Syria when he picked up some toys and it started explosive material and caused all those blisters around. It was very helpless and very difficult to help those kind of people. We didn't have inside Afghanistan enough personnel to get to that children to help. Again, with all those explosive, children lost their lamb and still happy, ready for again to go to the battlefield when he grows up. You can see the burn on those explosive. Children is malnourished. Most of our historical points were destroyed. And this country was full of the historical point because it's closer to China. Buddhism was very prominent once upon the time, almost 6,000 and more years ago. We have some, it's not really clear, some historical point here was destroyed. How I got this information, when I went to Pakistan, and I was not allowed to go inside the country, and my brother was involved in that war, and he comes to Pakistan and gave me all the information instead of some other people that I couldn't trust. Maybe some people lie or not. But anyway, he was telling me all the story, how horrible was that. And he caught in the middle sometime, but fortunately he was out because they were insisting any young people in DC in the country, they were sending to the military service to fight against the rebel. And you can see some of those weapons were captured. If you notice, most of those people were in different clothes. You don't have any regular uniform to go and identify themselves in groups to go and fight. And they were going in any type of clothes and got the weapon and tried to fight against those Russians, and they have the uniform. No matter the Russian had the uniform or the Russian puppet had the uniform, they were fighting. Again, our country was full of gemstone, and so most of those marble stones they were bringing to the Pakistan and using for their own benefit and the trademarks. Very disarray, military personnel, and some people wear the turban and clothes in a different way, and they just walk and go into the mountain area and fight against and capture any weapon and any cars and anything. You can see our country is very ragged mountain, and it's always full of snow in the winter time, exactly like here in Montana. That's one thing I like in Montana because it's more located in my own country. Well, in 1986, once the air was controlled by Russia and the ground was controlled by Mujahideen, which is called Mujahideen, this translated to the freedom fighter. In 86, when the American envoy saw the air was controlled by Russia because of the helicopter, all those aircraft. Fortunately, the Washington bureaucrat took so long to give the weapon to Mujahideen to get those aircraft out of the country. What they gave? The Stinger. That was proved after almost 2 years discussion. I have a lot of notes. I'm talking without my notes, so it might be very difficult for me to explain. The Stinger is 34-pound weapon that is the U.S. Army pride and joy. Believe me, this weapon really helped to the country. I tell you the story is coming thanks to the President Reagan proved that. This gentleman with the bushy beard got the Stinger and used it very accurately. The first time in 26th of 86, he come to the border and saw 3 helicopters was coming closer to the airport. And he identified those are Russian helicopters, and he got his weapon, Stinger, and aimed to that one of the aircraft and fired, shot one down. He was so excited, he couldn't wait, and he saw there was another tree still flying up there, and he shot another one and shot down another one and the third one. And that was the moment the voice was heard in all over the world that Afghanistan got the effective weapon, Russia cannot exist. So, as I said, the Stinger was supported in Congress, bipartisan, and also supported all over the world. They have to have some weapon to get those Russians out. Whatever, when Gorbachev comes to in power, and also he introduced the glasnost and perestroika, people of the Soviet Union openly opposed that fighting against in Afghanistan. However, loudly that voice was gone in Soviet Union, public population opposed that, the Russian has to get out. And Gorbachev was really smart enough, and he realized it's not worth it. Afghanistan war is a wound, bleeding wound. It will never stop the bleeding unless they drain the economy of the Russia down. Do you know how much does it cost to the Russia, those 9 to 10 years old? $70 billion cost to Russia just to support that 150,000 troops in Afghanistan. So they cannot afford it that to continue. And Afghanistan, the people will never give up unless everybody is destroyed. And they made also almost genocide. So that's what thanks to the Stinger, and that voice was heard all over the world, Russians trying to get out. What Stinger did, this is one of the example, shot down one of the helicopter. And the booby traps, you can say, when the moral is high enough, the weapon of the enemy become a toy. Children were playing with those toys after it was captured or used. Again, the mutilation of the people. I have a lot of evidence of those pictures to show you how much people were dead and how difficult was that to treat those. The Geneva survey shows that. That's documentary evidence. 1.5 million people murdered or permanent handicapped in 9-year war. It's not included those going on now. Let me, before I go to this, in Afghanistan the war is still not stopped. The Russians out, they're out very shamefully, and their tail between their legs, they're out, but they're still sending the advisor, and there's still unknown numbers of advisors in Afghanistan supporting the present puppet, the present regime, to be on the Russian benefit. For the last several months, since February 15, I have some unknown evidence they sent more than $2 billion weapon to that country. And they got also the chemical weapon, tell you, in that country is waiting to use in the last resort. Russian admitted they have not more than 50,000 ton chemical weapon. They admit that. But Western diplomat and evidence says they have more than 300,000 ton weapon, chemical weapon in that country. What happened? Probably they transfer some of the weapon to Afghanistan or Libya or another country to use sometime, or sold it. So the war is not ended yet unless some of the Western countries get more aggressive to help the Mujahideen or those freedom fighters to get out that present regime of Afghanistan. So come back to the genocide survey, 1.5 million. Totally tell you 2.5 million people were dead in Afghanistan war, just of Afghan people. And that is more than total Russian were killed in World War II. And can you believe that is totally genocide in that small country? Russian didn't realize Afghanistan is easy to be captured. In 70, they were hoping they will capture Afghanistan along with Nicaragua and Vietnam when they were successful, and along with another different country and communist countries. But Afghanistan people show them it's not easy to capture devoted people which they want to preserve their culture and their freedom. Well, the genocide was really excess, and Gorbachev tried to get out. And what happened now when the Russians got out? It shows their weakness. Most of the communist country realize when Russian and superpower cannot control a small country like Afghanistan, how they can control those communist countries which corruption was high, sky rock, and economy was down, and their standard of life was very poor. Demand for freedom first start after the Russian got out of Afghanistan. The Poland got their democracy. Hungary is going to start now, and there is political revolution going on inside the Russia now. Armenia and most of the tribes in Russia is trying to get their freedom, and they cannot tolerate it anymore, communism. The communism is going down, and this democracy is going to have a power, and it is the God-given freedom to the people. Baltic region, you can see they are trying to get their freedom. After 50 years, Poland got their democracy, Hungary is starting, and political revolution is starting in Eastern and Western Europe. Communism is not going to be exist anymore, and they realize it doesn't work. Let me come again back to the point now, my appreciation to the United States, and I'm so proudly and honorably telling you that. Proud to be in United States and be free and have the opportunity of education and freedom of press. That was my dream when I was in my country, not only my dream, but everybody else's dream in all over the world. Everybody wants to come to that international country and have the freedom of choice to live, freedom of speech, and opportunity for education in high standard living. When I was in high school, I wanted to come to Western country and have a higher education and pursue my freedom and my freedom of choice. I thanks again when I was accepted in Army Reserve as an officer. I was really appreciative of that, and I realized this country is stand of freedom, and everybody wants to be somebody they can be. No matter where you come from, show your education and your ability to be, you can get it. Proudly, I was so proud of this uniform to wear. Not only me and my family, we enjoy the freedom of this country and the opportunity of living in a free world. I thanks again to all of you and all the country of United States. And I will stop here. God bless America. And I will answer some question if you have any. I'll be glad to answer. I don't want to go too much. I have so much I can tell and talk all day long. But let's stop up here. I will be glad to answer any question you have about the Russia and Afghanistan. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 2 questions. Understand, and congratulations. I agree with you.
Thank you.
Of course, the United States.
Thanks.
Being from the great state of Virginia, 5 miles out of D.C., I appreciate what you said. The Russians, understand, took several thousand children, 8, 9, 7 years old.
Right.
What has become of those youngsters?
Well, let me tell you, the Russians tried to use a lot of different techniques. When they got to the country, they realized the elderly and the young population is not going to be convinced to go along with Russia in communism. They tried to get more of those orphans by name the orphan and take to the country and try to brainwash. But let me tell you that those people, some come back to the country and they listen back to those older people. They were not agreed to go along with communism. Some of those are still in the Russia and they are trying to educate it in a different way.
What was the number?
There were more than 200,000. And there's a lot of people, even the women and young children, and they were taken there to train on their own communism way. That's why still some part of our people, which is the puppet of that regime, controlling the only capital of Afghanistan. But most of the provinces are still free in the hand of those freedom fighters. Yes, sir.
Second question. I understand that factions, what you mean, are in conflict. Because it's been history, I guess you agree. There have always been clans or whatever, internal fighting. I understand the reason that this government's not been taken over is that the Mujahideen are fighting among themselves somewhat.
Well, that is true. That has some point here. Let me tell you, before in the history and before World War II in Germany, in Europe, there was tribes. There was one tribe named the destructive tribes. They were always wanted to destroy, no matter if it's good or bad. We have in our country several tribes. Once the Russia got invaded, those tribes come out, the leader of the tribes come out to the border area. They developed some community and unity. There were 7 tribes. There are still 7 tribes. They tried to make plan and go in different part of the country, which the tribe was controlling different part of the country. They belonged to that region. They were fighting against the Russia. That has some benefit because different tribes tried to get inside the Afghanistan, which they born in that area, and they know how to control that, and they know how to fight in the rugged mountain. They know where's the way and how to hide. But there is still unity. Sometimes always there is some disagreement, no matter even in a big country and a lot of other political dilemma between Democrat and Republican. Always disagreement. Those tribes are trying to solve some disagreement between their own. Of course, everybody wants to get to the higher position and get the power. But that's not in certain extent they're destroying each other. They are trying to help each other.
Another factor, what happens when, say, this puppet government is taken out? I understand some people have mentioned they're very concerned, maybe you can share some light on this, that Afghanistan could become a very fundamentalist Muslim in a nature, in a makeup of Iran is. Is that a danger? Whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. But let me tell you, in the history of Afghanistan, that never happened. The fundamentalism is different in that country. There is two different type of Muslim. One is Shiite Muslim, you heard. One is Sunni Muslim. Sunni Muslim is most likely Orthodox type of Muslim. They don't want to have a power directly or control some other, destroy some human being. And they're not following the leader. They're just following the strict holy books. Bible is also included. Fundamentalism is not feasible in that country because in the history it doesn't show is following a leader like in Iran or some other countries. So that's never happened. But there is one tribe or one or two leader probably are supporting by those the Muslim from different countries like from Iran. But we know that and the public knows they will never get a chance to have a power there.
Dr. Kocer, maybe you could give us a kind of a historical background on who has actually been in charge of Afghanistan the past, from 6,000 years to present, most recent, like before Russia.
Well, I'm glad you brought up this question. Let me tell you a little bit the history. In those areas, in that country, there was a king, always a king. A king was always from the family to family, and that happened. What happened around 76, before 76, 75, King Shah that was also a plan in the family. The king was gone to different country, out of the country for some treatment. And his cousin took over in a military coup situation. Military coup, that time I was in Afghanistan, there was no more than 3-4 people killed. It was very planned coup, which the cousin took over. The Shah was older and he couldn't control anymore, and he was giving up. He couldn't control the country because of some corruption and not getting to any economical support. So the cousin took over and he announced to be a president, give more democracy. He was in the beginning pro-communist, but he had an idea that communism is not going to work. He was trying to distract his own from the communism, and that's why the Russian tried to have several coups during that period of time. So he was killed, another puppet come in that country, and he was controlled, and he was killed. And this right now is almost the 5th one he is controlling the country, but not successfully. So there's no any more king, just only a president in this time.
If
I have some.
if the rebels were successful and the puppet government was thrown out, what kind of a government would you see coming
Well,
in? Would
there
this
will
be
be
a president or a king?
There will be president, no king. King is not acceptable anymore. And that will be the unity of those 7 tribes. They were decided among their own to get whatever is the benefit for the country. I have some Afghan news, which is the latest one in August, September, is published in the United States. You're welcome to have a copy, and that tells some of those Russian was captured in the country, and their mothers talked to the people in Afghanistan and give their idea. They were always opposing. Yes?
When you were talking about volunteers, were there many people from America that volunteered?
There was a lot of people, a lot of different organizations from the United States, specifically in medical field. There was volunteered to go there. Different emergency teams, not only from the United States, from all over the Europe, Saudi Arabia, and some of the African countries. Even China was helping.
There is an embassy in
there's a consulate right now, but not officially. What happened in the embassy in 1979, once the Russian invaded, the ambassador was kept, and he was unfortunately killed by those Russian squad. They took the embassy out, and the personnel was sent to the United States because of the jeopardy of capturing the hostages.
Are there still British people in Afghanistan?
There are some consulates still in Afghanistan. Yeah.
Is there any continuing United States aid to the rebels now that the war is officially over?
Yes, there are still a lot of aid is continued. The war is ended by paper, but it's not ended yet. There's not only from United States, but also to the neighbor country, Pakistan. There's a lot of aid is sent to support those rebels to overthrow the present regime.
Maybe you could comment on like the medical aspects, the level of education of the people that you were training to do first aid, some of the things that you taught them, some of the ways that they had been treating their wounded, things like that.
The medical personnel is very primitive, as I show in the picture. Most of the educated people got out or they have been killed because they were opposing also the war. The people they are now trying to help in a primitive way, they are all trained in very first aid and basic training in the medical field. But it's not, fortunately, in the border, in some part of the Afghanistan, underground, there's a lot of medical personnel from different countries of the world has been active and they are trying to help.
What happens on the battlefield though where you can't get into or it's delayed getting to the border? What
It's a
happens
very
there?
difficult situation, and those rebels trying to bring all those wounded patients on the mule or donkey or just by any meaning to get it to the point and they can get a treatment. But tell you what, 50% of those, more than 50% die and they cannot get to the point when they see the medical help.
What might be some of the distances that they would be covering, say, to get to the border?
There's about 100 miles inside the Afghanistan, very undercover area. It's controlled by rebels. They have some medical personnel stationed there. Not very inside.
Since they only know basic first aid and they're dealing with some of the injuries you showed, the mutilation, the legs have been blown off and things like that, what can they possibly really do for some of the rebels who are injured with those types of injuries when they only know basic first aid?
Well, as I show in the beginning on those pictures, only they can do in cover and very first aid, which is included in a very basic cover from the infection or getting a part of those wounds or whatever. It's not too much. It's not sophisticated and it's very little help. Whoever made it, they can make it and continue. If not, so they died or get the limb out and amputate.